Understanding Aphorism 5 Part 2. Let us continue our discussion regarding the fifth aphorism. The fifth aphorism states, "Useful to the physician in assisting him to cure are the particulars of the most probable exciting cause of the acute disease, as also the most significant points in the whole history of the chronic disease, to enable him to discover its fundamental cause, which is generally due to a chronic miasm. In these investigations, the ascertainable physical constitution of the patient, especially when the disease is chronic, his moral and intellectual character, his occupation, mode of living and habits, his social and domestic relations, his age, sexual functions, etc., are to be taken into consideration." In our last lecture, we have already discussed the exciting cause of an acute disease and the fundamental cause of a chronic disease. But our work of finding the simillimum is not easy, and although the causative factors play a decisive role in finding the simillimum, we still have to take into consideration a variety of other factors to make a correct remedy choice and to lead the patient to cure. In addition to the causative factor, we can use many other variables like the appearance of a person, his mental constitution, his work or profession, lifestyle, habits, relationships, gender, sexual functions, age, etc. Now let us explore some of these factors in more detail. This will help us appreciate their importance in finding the simillimum. First, we'll study the physical constitution. You must have read about the constitutions associated with many of our remedies. Sulphur is tall, thin and stoop-shouldered. Calcarea is fat, fair and flabby. Sepia is thin, scrawny and flat-chested. Phosphorus is tall, lean and with sharp features. Graphitis is stout in appearance. Baryta is short, and so on. Ever wondered where these physical constitutions come from? There are two primary sources. First, during a proving, a medicine is seen to affect a particular constitution more than the others. Secondly, after prescribing a particular remedy to dozens, probably hundreds of people, it is seen that the people who are benefited by this remedy often have some common physical traits. Such traits, when confirmed repeatedly, find their way in our Materia medicas as physical constitution. Physical constitutions are not definite. That means, not every calcarea case is going to be fat, fair and flabby. I have prescribed it to too many thin and dark people with success to take it as a definite. Similarly, not every phosphorus is going to be tall and not every baryta is going to be dwarfish. But the constitutional picture is still very handy. Why? Because the physical structure is usually inherited along with many other mental traits and susceptibilities. So when a person with a particular constitution comes in front of you, you are often able to judge what to expect from this case. It may not prove correct every time, but it does help us narrow down our choice of remedies. It is also a very useful tool in situations where a homeopath needs to prescribe a remedy but is unable to communicate effectively due to language or religion barriers. It also helps us to study the miasmatic influences on that person, but that when we'll discuss more about miasms. Here I'll add a note of caution for the students. The physical constitution is never to be used in isolation to prescribe a remedy. Do not use it blindly. It can help in remedy selection when used judiciously and along with the complete case. But if used in isolation, the results will be few and far in between. Another note of caution that I would like to add here. In some books of Materia medicas, you will find constitutions classified as hydrogenoid, nitrogenoid, carbooxygenoid, phlegmatic, leucophlegmatic, etc. In my personal opinion, you should not use this data in relation to our remedy pictures. This classification is very hypothetical and is actually derived from a nearly 2000-year-old classification given by Hippocrates. Von Grofgol promoted these constitutional types in homeopathy with a broad remedy classification, which in my opinion is very synthetic. Now let's move on to the mental and emotional constitution. Hahnemann was a visionary in that he was probably among the first few people who thought of using a mental and emotional framework as an aid to treatment. But before we move further, it is necessary to differentiate between mental symptoms and mental characteristics. Mental and emotional symptoms are changes in our mental and emotional functions as a result of sickness, the disease process. For example, anxiety after witnessing an accident. Here, the shock of witnessing an accident is an exciting cause, and the anxiety is the symptom. Similarly, depression due to grief. Here, the grief is the exciting cause, and the depression is a symptom. Mental and emotional characteristics are the traits that people are born with, or sometimes acquire due to life experiences. In most cases, the traits are inherited. For example, optimism and pessimism are often mental attitudes that people are born with. Similarly, some people are anxious right from birth. They worry about everything. The anxiety is then not a mental symptom unless associated with some disease. It is a mental characteristic. Some people are emotionally expressive, some are not. Some people think before they act, and there are others who act before they think. Fear, if associated with some cause, is a symptom. But there is no dearth of people who are fearful in general. Here, the fearfulness becomes a trait, something that characterizes the person, not just his or her disease process. The first homeopathic idiom that we were taught in our college was treat the person, not the disease. That we were never taught how to treat the person is an entirely different matter. Anyway, what this basically means is that we have to study the person along with his disease process. Many people misunderstand this idiom and start believing that we do not need to bother about the disease. But that is entirely wrong. Ultimately, it is the disease process that you are trying to cure. Homeopathy was never meant to treat the fundamental human traits in isolation. Mental symptoms and mental characteristics are both useful in selecting the remedy. But the symptoms come first. A remedy that covers the traits but not the symptoms is not the ideal similimum. Just like the physical constitutions, the knowledge about traits is not as objective as proving data, and you should always study the mental constitution with a pinch of salt. Because not every arsenic is anxious, not every tarantula loves music, not every carcinosin is artistic, not every sulfur is a philosopher. The mental constitutions fit in a large number of cases, but not always. So always be open-minded and flexible at the time of remedy selection. Do not make these mental and emotional constitutions a hard and fast rule for remedy selection. Just like physical constitution, mental and emotional characteristics should also be used to select the best remedy from among the group of remedies that cover the symptoms of the case well. They should not be used in isolation to prescribe, because if you do so, you will not be doing homeopathy. I have another thing to say here. In the last few decades, there has been an increasing trend to prescribe on the basis of mental and emotional constitution. This movement to understand the essence of a remedy started with the work of Vithoulkas and Massey, and was carried forward by the likes of Sankaran, Mangyalwari, and Scholten. There is nothing wrong in understanding the person, but the problem started when people in some schools started to ignore the physical generals, the disease symptoms, and the pathology, and started prescribing only on the constitutional essence of the patient. This trend still continues and is actually on the rise. Such one-sided prescriptions and the schools that teach and promote such methods should be condemned in the strongest possible manner. Now let us move to occupation, which is another important factor that needs to be considered while evaluating a person for chronic diseases. In my last lecture, I had discussed the diseases whose fundamental cause is not a chronic miasm. These diseases are called occupational diseases. These days, an increasing number of chronic conditions arise due to the occupation or from stress associated with the work. Whenever you get a patient, do ask about his occupation, whether he likes his work or not, what is the environment in his office, or if there are any other issues associated with the workplace. There are some diseases that you can directly relate to the occupation. For example, asthma in people working in mines, sinusitis in people working in damp environments like dairies, skin infections and dermatitis in people working in chemical and dyeing industries, cervical spondylitis in people working on computers for long hours, indigestion in people with sedentary work. In such cases, your remedy will not be able to cure the patient unless and until the causative and maintaining factor is removed. In other cases, the work by itself does not cause any disease, but the work environment may be causing problems. There may be issues related to abuse, injustice, frustration, jealousy, etc. that arise from issues related to the workplace. Such issues need to be brought out into the open during the case taking and addressed with counseling and suitable homeopathic remedy. After that, once we have discussed the life in office, we need to study the lifestyle and habits of the person in general too. These days, our lifestyle and habits are increasingly becoming a source of increased susceptibility to diseases. Unhealthy diet, junk and processed food, pollution, watching TV for long hours, lack of physical exercise, late nights, irregular sleep, too much exposure to pornography, all tend to make us more susceptible to disease process by decreasing our vitality. These factors may not be easily related with the current condition of a patient, but in a large percentage of cases, you will find that the person himself is responsible for his own undoing. In the fourth aphorism, we discussed that a physician is not just supposed to treat the sick. His work also includes prevention of disease and maintenance of health. You need to work with your patients to ensure that they develop a healthy lifestyle. Otherwise, it is often difficult to cure. You can't clap with one hand. The patient needs to work on his own well-being too. And as a physician, it is your duty to guide him in the right direction. Another important factor in understanding the person in front of you is the social and domestic relations of that person. The social and personal relations of a person can also give us a cue to his predispositions, changes in his mental and emotional health, and his or her mental characteristics. The way people behave with their wives, husbands, children, parents, friends, colleagues, neighbors, and strangers walking on the road can give you sufficient information about a person's likes, dislikes, preferences, and overall mental traits. When the patient is known to you, you will be able to observe the behavior yourself. In other cases, you may need to ask the patient as well as the attendants about the person's behavior and relationship with others. Let me give you some examples. The fluoric acid patient is known to be a gentleman outside the home, but a baddie inside. The lachesis patient may feel envious of others easily. The natrum sulfa and pulsatilla patients may be easily dominated in their relations, whereas a platina may try to be the center of everything in a relationship. The causticum patient may try to help an injured person or an old man, whereas the stephysagria patient may have an who cares attitude in such situations. The study of relationships help us decipher the mental traits that we have discussed above and is hence an important part of case taking. Age is again an important factor that needs to be taken into consideration and can help us narrow down our choice of remedies. During our provings, it was found that some remedies work better in some age groups. For instance, Baryta seemed to work well at the two ends of the age spectrum, very young and very old. Chamomilla, senna, podophyllum, antimcrude are known to cover the problems of children well. Calcareas are often indicated in adolescence. Lachesis often finds indications at menopausal age, and so on. These indications of age are again not definite. Ultimately, the remedy selection is governed by symptom similarity. But we have to value the experience that homeopaths have gathered in these last 200 years, and if a remedy is known to work well in a particular age group, there is no harm in keeping it in mind when selecting the remedy or for the patient. Another very important aspect of human life is sex. Sex is one of the most searched words on the internet. Our biological drive for to reproduce is so strong that we don't need to read someone else's opinion to understand the importance of our sexual functions. In modern society, as the hold of religion has weakened and the desire for freedom has increased, there has been a marked change in human sexual social behavior. Living in one-night stands, casual sex, promiscuity, etc. have become so common that we do not even raise an eyebrow when we hear about them. Sex has come out of the sanctity of married relations. But all this freedom has led to an ever-increasing sexually transmitted diseases like AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, hepatitis, etc. The sexual freedom has also led to relationship problems for many. With increasing sexual desires, sexual frustrations have also increased manifold, resulting in a variety of problems varying from impotence to psychological disorders. Unplanned pregnancies, abortions, and side effects of oral contraceptive drugs is also part of the trade-off for sexual freedom. So whenever you take a chronic case, do take the sexual history of the patient wherever it appears relevant. In both males and females, the age of attainment of puberty and history of masturbation should be inquired into. In adults, inquiry should be made about promiscuity, sexual diseases, menses, and any issues related with sexual functions. But do remember that you need a lot of tact to gather such information, and the information should not be sought bluntly or when not relevant. The patient should be made to understand the importance of these details if he or she is hesitant in answering your queries. It is still not very easy to gather this information in the Eastern Hemisphere, but efforts should be made to find out as much relevant information as is possible. In the end, I would like to say that there is no mathematical formula for good case taking. You have to individualize your case taking according to the patient in front of you. You cannot ask every patient every question. Hahnemann was way ahead of his times in ascertaining the totality of the case. There is probably no literature parallel to the Organon that lists the need for such detailed evaluation of a patient. Chronic diseases arise from a variety of causes, and you have to do a detailed assessment to find out what it was that deranged the vitality of the person to such extent as to cause such a chronic disease. The work is not easy, but the rewards compensate amply for the hard work. Thank you.